PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this episode, we are going to be saying goodbye to Daniil Miromanov, as he is going to be part of the package deal that is going to be sent to the Calgary Flames for Noah Hanifin. And on this episode, I just want to take a second and talk about this couple of seasons that he has been with the Golden Knights organization, kind of go over what he did with the Henderson Silver Knights and then the Vegas Golden Knights, and really interesting situation throughout his career. So just wanted to take a quick second and do this episode and really go over the career of Daniil Miromanov here on Vegas Hockey Hub. Before we get into this breakdown, I want to very quickly shout out our social media pages here for Vegas Hockey Hub. So go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button where we upload content to a YouTube channel. We're going to have exclusive stuff like Vegas Hockey Hub Recap, where we've been breaking down every single episode and every single game of the Vegas Golden Knights season. And then we also upload Vegas Hockey Hub shorts and everything like that onto our YouTube channel. We also upload our links to our Facebook page. So if you want to go to Facebook, we'll have every single episode on our Facebook page. Our Instagram and our TikTok are uploaded for us going to the Vegas Golden Knight practice sessions or Vegas Golden Knight games. We upload the content of us being at those games. So that would be our Instagram and our TikTok at Vegas Hockey Hub. And then on Twitter at Vegas Hockey Hub, where we do live tweeting sessions where throughout every single Vegas Golden Knights game, we will be doing some live events and everything with the audience and all the people who interact with us and engage in our content on Twitter at Vegas Hockey Hub. And then I also want to mention www.prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. Over a dozen shows on the platform, including Vegas Hockey Hub. And I just want to take a quick second and shout them out because they have us on their network every single day at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. And we're going to get into all of that here on Vegas Hockey Hub. I just want to do a quick shout out and shout out all the social media pages that are part of this show. Now, when it comes to Daniil Miromanov, the Russian from Moscow, this is a very interesting story because unlike other goodbye episodes where we've, broken down their college career, broken down their junior career, where we've acknowledged things that have happened before the Vegas Golden Knights tenure, it's kind of difficult to do with Daniil Miromanov for the simple fact that he was a undrafted free agent. All right, he was not drafted by the Vegas Golden Knights. He was signed over from Russia by the Vegas Golden Knights back in 2021. So because it is 2021, that means that we only have 3 seasons of content to go over with Daniil Miromanov. But to give you the quick cliff notes of Daniil Miromanov, this is a guy who originally was in the KHL playing for HC Sochi out there in 2017-2018. And then he moved over and played one more season in the KHL, and that was in 2020-2021. So during that tenure, 2 seasons playing in the KHL for Daniil Miromanov, he played in around 70 games in the KHL and had 10 goals and 29 points in his KHL tenure. And then after that, he went to the QMJHL out there in Quebec. And, he played, out there for the Wildcats and had a relatively solid tenure with them, averaging just a little under a point per game out there in the QMJHL. And then before the Vegas Golden Knights, he had a brief tenure with the Los Angeles Kings ECHL affiliate, and that is the Manchester Monarchs. And he was with them for a season before coming to the Golden Knights organization, and he was just under a point per game out there in the ECHL whereas in 60 games in 2018-2019, he would have 15 goals and 44 points. So not bad for his first season playing professional hockey in North America. So that was solid there. So just very quickly wanted to give you that breakdown real quick before we get into the Vegas Golden Knights tenure. So 2 years in the KHL, 1 year in the ECHL with the LA Kings affiliate, and then he would end up coming to Vegas, and I will explain how that happened in just a quick second. Now, to get into his Vegas Golden Knight tenure, I'm going to start from the very beginning on that. As on March 16th, 2021, Daniil Miromanov would agree to a entry-level contract with the Vegas Golden Knights, and that is on the back end of the COVID 2020-2021 season. And he would join the Henderson Silver Knights organization, and interesting enough for him, he would play in the last 11 games of the 2020-2021 season for the Henderson Silver Knights, or the first season in Henderson Silver Knights history. So he was part of that inaugural roster with the Henderson Silver Knights. And what's fascinating about it is that in those 11 games, he only had 2 assists for 2 points and 2 penalty minutes. So on the surface, if you just look at his stats, it's not that impressive. But the Vegas Golden Knights saw potential in Miromanov. And the Golden Knights liked what they saw from him because after that 11-game stint, the 6 games in the regular season, then the 5 games in the Calder Cup playoffs, the Vegas Golden Knights would announce that Daniil Miromanov would join the Vegas Golden Knights in training camp in the 2021 preseason. He would also be part of the rookie training camp. He'd be part of the development camp that year. So he really started to be part of the organization with your Vegas Golden Knights in the start of the 2021-2022 season. And there was a lot of promise about Daniil Miromanov. I vividly remember that in the 2021 preseason, there was a lot of news articles and a lot of people that were tweeting that Daniil Miromanov was one of the players that was impressing people in the development camp. There was a lot of people that were really spotlighting Daniil Miromanov as someone that you should watch out for after coming out of training camp. And the Vegas Golden Knights would not have him be in Vegas right away, as they would actually assign him to the AHL to play a full season in the Henderson Silver Knights for 2021-2022. And we're going to break down all of that here on PR Connections Radio, here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And while the 2021-2022 season would be a bumpy ride for Daniil Miromanov, as he would kind of fluctuate between the AHL, between the taxi squad, and even a few games in the NHL for the Vegas Golden Knights themselves, his tenure in Henderson was amazing and actually a standout for Daniil Miromanov. As in 2021-2022, Daniil Miromanov in just 53 games out of the 65 that he was going to play that year, the Vegas Golden Knights affiliate for the AHL, Daniil Miromanov would have 11 goals, 29 assists for 40 points, and he would have a plus 11 for the Henderson Silver Knights. Now, this is from HockeyDB.com. I always source my references here. Daniil Miromanov, he would have the team lead in assists and would be second in plus minus. So for his first full-time campaign in the AHL and his first full-time season in the Vegas Golden Knights affiliate, for Daniil Miromanov to lead the team in assists and to lead the team in plus minus and be second in plus minus, that is incredible for Daniil Miromanov. And by the way, interesting note, he would be third in points that year, only being behind Benjamin Jones, who is no longer on the team, and Pavel Dorofeyev, who a lot of people have been watching this year, has had a notable rookie campaign for the Vegas Golden Knights and has a promising future ahead of him in the NHL and in Vegas. But it's really fascinating to look at the Silver Knights in 2021, 2022. Pavel Dorofeyev, Daniil Miromanov. We saw Paul Cotter, who was actually right below Daniil Miromanov in the point section here with the Henderson Silver Knights in 2021, 2022. So there was a lot of bright spots from that roster. But yeah, Daniil Miromanov, his first full season in the AHL, and he did a fantastic job. Like I mentioned, he led the team in assists. He was second in plus minus and third in points for your Henderson Silver Knights. Now, I did mention that he did not play every single game in the AHL, and I did mention something called the taxi squad. Now, I'm not going to go overboard on this, but I'm going to give you a brief rundown on what that was. During the COVID era of the NHL, which was the back end of 2019-2020, the entire 2020-2021 season, and at the beginning of 2021-2022, the NHL had what they called a taxi squad, where there was a certain amount of players that were allotted to be kind of a buffer zone between the AHL and the NHL, so that they could get called down at any time and go in the AHL, but they also could get called up to the NHL if any player got called out for COVID, or if there was any last-minute injuries. Somebody from the taxi squad could get called up immediately and start that same day. So it was kind of a buffer zone during the COVID era. And Daniil Miromanov would actually be for a little bit on that taxi squad and would eventually earn his place with the Vegas Golden Knights. And we'll talk about all of that here on Vegas Hockey Hub on prconnectionsradio.com. Now, for the 2021-2022 NHL season, Daniil Miromanov, he would get the call up to the NHL roster and would make his debut on October 21st, 2021 against the New York Islanders. And this was a really cool moment for Daniil Miromanov. He would be on the third defensive pairing. This would have had a lot to do with injuries and everything that was going on there. But this also was a big deal for Miromanov. You know, this is also a defensive core that had Dylan Coghlan still. He was with the team. Petrangelo, Haig, Theodore, McNabb. But Miromanov getting the call up and making his debut against the New York Islanders, against Ilya Sorokin and that team there. And then in the next game, and this is from NHL.com, he would register his first career point in the NHL as he would get an assist in the game against the Colorado Avalanche the very next day. So very interesting how by the end of October, he's building up his confidence in the AHL. He gets the call up to the NHL, and he ends up, like I said, not only getting his first career start and getting to have his first debut in the NHL, but it's also the same guy that would end up having an assist in the second game of his career. And this was on a Chandler Stevenson goal against Colorado. And as the rest of the season would go on, the Vegas Golden Knights would have Daniil Miromanov play in 11 games that year. He only had 1 point, which was that assist on the Chandler Stevenson goal against Colorado. But it was all about establishing that confidence and getting all those reps in as a young defenseman in the Golden Knights organization. So, to conclude the 2021-2022 era for Daniil Miromanov, he would play in 64 games with the AHL and NHL stats combined, would have 11 goals, 30 assists for 41 points on the year. Not bad for his first full season playing in the Vegas Golden Knights organization. And there was a lot of intrigue and hype around Daniil Miromanov entering the 2022-2023 season. And we were really curious to see how he would perform for the Vegas Golden Knights. And we'll cover all of that here on Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, the 2022-2023 season for Daniil Miromanov would have a lot of good strides in it, and Daniil Miromanov would be a part of a Stanley Cup winning team. Even though his name would not be on the Stanley Cup itself, he still is a member of that roster. But let me break all of this down. Now, for 2022, 2023, in training camp and in preseason, he's with the Golden Knights. He's working hard, trying to make the roster for the Vegas Golden Knights. However, for Daniil Miromanov, he would start down in the AHL, and he would end up being with the Henderson Silver Knights. And what's interesting, according to Hockey Reference, is that the Henderson Silver Knights that year, he played in 31 games, had 9 goals, 13 assists for 22 points. So just a little under a point per game in his third season playing for the Henderson Silver Knights organization. And this is also would be really his last full-time run in the AHL for Daniil Miromanov. So for the guy who is 25 years old, is a defenseman that after this season was essentially going to become an NHLer, either an everyday guy or a healthy scratch, but he would be an everyday NHLer after that point. So for Daniil Miromanov, his final statistics in the AHL as a full-time member, really interesting to talk about when it comes to Daniil Miromanov, because this is a guy who played in 95 AHL games with the Henderson Silver Knights, and he ended up having 20 goals in his career with the Henderson Silver Knights during that 3-year tenure that he would have in Henderson. So, he plays 31 games in 2022, 2023, and then he would play in just 14 games in the 2022-2023 season for the Vegas Golden Knights during the magical run that they would win the Stanley Cup that year. And like I said, he's not credited. He's not on the Stanley Cup. They did not have him on that list of players that would have their name on the Stanley Cup. But in 14 games that year, he would have 2 goals and 6 points with the Vegas Golden Knights organization. And here's a fun fact for you, and this is why I brought up Hockey Reference. So according to Hockey Reference, Daniil Miromanov, in terms of his first ever goal in the NHL, he would score against Connor Hellebuyck. So if there's any goalie that you could kind of have an accomplishment against as it being your first career NHL goal, a goaltender like Connor Hellebuyck, who has gone down as one of the best goalies in the world over the last couple of years. So that is an accomplishment for Daniil Miromanov, his first ever goal in the NHL against Winnipeg, against Hellebuyck. And then his second goal would come later that year against the Arizona Coyotes. And also, by the way, William Karlsson had an assist on both of those goals during that scenario. So for Daniil Miromanov, like I mentioned, he had 2 goals and 4 assists in that 14-game span. And entering the season in 2023, 2024, the one that we're talking about just now, Daniil Miromanov would have an interesting journey with the Vegas Golden Knights, and something interesting would pop up with Daniil Miromanov entering this year. And we're going to talk about all of that here on Vegas Hockey Hub, here on PR Connection. Now, entering the past season that we have had here with the Vegas Golden Knights, Daniil Miromanov would be on the long-term IR entering this season. And as a matter of fact, he would not play the first couple of months in Vegas or in Henderson, as a matter of fact. And it took a while for Miromanov to even be in a red jersey and no contact jersey in practice and morning skates. And eventually, by the time that we did get to see Miromanov be skating around with the Vegas Golden Knights and Henderson Silver Knights organization, it would not be a long tenure with Daniil Miromanov, as he would only play in 9, and yes, that's correct, only 9 games in this past season for the Golden Knights organization. And in those 9 games, even though he did have 1 goal, and 6 points in those 9 games. The fact is, when it comes to Daniil Miromanov, him being hurt and him having those injuries kind of led the Vegas Golden Knights to kind of put him on that list of assets that they could move around, and that's what ended up happening. Now, with the Vegas Golden Knights, he only played in 4 games this year, and during those 4 games, he had 0 goals, 0 assists, 0 points. Really wasn't anything notable to happen in the 4 games that he played for the Vegas Golden Knights this year. As a matter of fact, once again, shout out to capfriendly.com. They actually have the games and everything that he played. And according to them, that season with the 2023-2024 season, Daniil Miromanov would only play in February. Okay, so up until February, Daniil Miromanov, like I said, he was on long-term IR. He got hurt, and training camp, preseason, October, November, December, January. It wasn't until a 4-game stretch in February where he played against Arizona, Minnesota, Carolina, and San Jose. And that San Jose game would be the last game as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. And outside of 1 shot on net, that was really the last notable thing that Daniil Miromanov did as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. And even if you go to his AHL tenure, which was a lot more successful in his 4th and final year being a Henderson Silver Knight, it's kind of fascinating to look at what Miromanov did in that stretch. As in those 5 games that he played for the Henderson Silver Knights, that only happened at the end of January to the beginning of February. But in his first game in the AHL that year against Coachella Valley, he would score a goal against Coachella Valley. And then the next game against Colorado would have a 2-assist night. The next game against the Iowa Wild would have a 2-assist night. And then on February 3rd, his last and final game with the Henderson Silver Knights against the Iowa Wild would pick up his final assist in the AHL for Henderson. So with Daniil Miromanov leaving the Vegas Golden Knights organization, him being part of that package deal for Noah Hanifin with the 2024 NHL trade deadline, I want to very quickly go over the final stat sheet of Daniil Miromanov and his tenure with Vegas. So in the 3 years he has played here in Vegas, he played in just 29 games for the Golden Knights, racked up 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points. He would have a -8 plus-minus, which is not the best plus-minus in the world. And the only thing I will say is that he only had 4 penalty minutes. So for a defenseman, 4 penalty minutes in just 29 games, that is a solid job there. Other notables, I would say, throughout his tenure, he had around 40 shots on net for the Vegas Golden Knights. This is also somebody who averaged around 15 minutes a night as a defenseman. And by the way, for certain defensemen who average well over 20 minutes a game, some even 25 minutes a game, that really shows you that he was a 3rd defensive pairing for majority of his run here with the Vegas Golden Knights. 24 block shots, 14 hits, and he also had 3 takeaways with the Vegas Golden Knights. Once again, hockeyreference.com for that information. And then with the Henderson Silver Knights, I did mention this briefly, but I will say it once again, eliteprospects.com, where I got this information. And with the Henderson Silver Knights, 100 games he played in Henderson, and he racked up 21 goals during that time. So this was a goodbye episode to Daniil Miromanov here on Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.